Hello everyone and welcome back to Shining Brighter. My name's Nick, and today we're going to talk about shadow work. Shadow work is the worst part of the journey. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of discipline, a lot of admission, and a lot of acceptance. But if you can do those things and you really take a look in at yourself to see where you might be weak, or you might need to change your perceptions, the reward is far greater than you can probably imagine. Before I continue, if you like my content, you like what I'm doing, please comment, like, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you get notifications when new videos are up. Having said that, I'm going to share with you guys some of my personal shadow work that I had to do, because I think, when I can give you my personal experiences, it helps lend a perspective other than just telling you about what shadow work is. For those who don't know what shadow work is when you decide, that you need to change things in your life, emotionally and mentally and spiritually, and you make that decision that you're ready. It's looking inward, like I said previously. It's looking at who you are, how you present yourself, how people perceive you, how they treat you, what you've been accepting, what you shouldn't accept, and understanding that the only way things are going to change is if you do the shadow work and you make the change. I think I said this previously, nobody can fix you, nobody can save you. You're the only one that can do those things. And, people can support you. They can, lend you a hand up when you fall down. And they can encourage you. But to make the actual changes, that's your own job. It's your responsibility. And a lot of people are afraid because they don't think they can do it. Believing yourself, is key to the whole thing. Making that final decision that, yes, I'm flawed, and, some of the reason I get treated the way I do is because of the way I present myself, and I need to change. In my case, my issues were, I was a people pleaser. Part of that is by the nature of Capricorn. The way we show love, care, and affection is through acts of service. And, we get a great sense of satisfaction when we can do something for somebody that makes a difference, or even just makes them smile when they're down, or even just makes them smile, period. But unfortunately, not knowing my worth and my value, not respecting myself, even though I didn't know I didn't, and not setting boundaries with people cost me a lot. Many times people took my kindness for weakness and they walked all over me, and I allowed it. I would lie to myself and say, no, they really appreciate this. They're not treating me poorly. Or, I must have done something wrong. Maybe I have to try harder or do more. And that's the kind of mindset that just gets you in trouble. Being a people pleaser actually does the opposite, because what it does is it creates an atmosphere where people lose respect for you, not because they think you're a bad person, because you haven't set any boundaries, and they feel like they can pretty much get you to do whatever they want, no matter how they treat you. So that was a big part of my problem. I never sought outside help because I always believed that if I couldn't handle my own problems, then I wasn't good enough or strong enough to help anybody else. And I know I've said that before, and the realization is that it's completely wrong. Everybody needs help sometime. Having the courage to ask for help doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger, because you recognize within yourself, maybe you can't do it all alone. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be cut off. We're not meant to be solitary. As human beings, at the core of our very existence is the need for connections, to be with people who love us, support us, care about us, and want us to succeed. And I wasn't attracting that kind of person. I think the people around me generally knew that I was a good person, and on some level did have respect for me, but it wasn't what it should have been because of what I was allowing. Now that carried over into my work life as well as my previous marriage. And when I finally got to the point where I accepted the fact that I was being treated poorly, and no matter the amount of effort or work or good deeds that I put in was going to change the situations, I realized that I needed to change me. I needed to set boundaries and enforce them. But to be able to do that, I needed help. I needed to figure out, what my value and worth were. I needed to figure out, how to respect myself. And part of my biggest problem in the whole journey was trying to distinguish setting boundaries and holding firm with still being what I perceived as being a good person. I knew I needed to change, but I didn't want to change who I was as a person, meaning I didn't want to become, a jerk or arrogant or mean to people, because none of those are good things, and I don't want to be those. My whole life has been about being a good person, and helping people and making other people feel good. I just had to learn how to do it with boundaries in place. And that's where the shadow work came in. I had to admit to myself that I needed help, that I finally got to that point where, I knew work was broken, I knew the marriage was broken, and I knew that I was never going to get respect from either. So I made the decision to initiate the divorce. And, I tried to handle it as respectfully as I could, and I won't go into it out of respect for my ex, because I'm not here to slander her in any way. And, I made the decision that as soon as it's financially feasible, I'm leaving my job. And I've told you before, I'm a police officer. And, I do think that the profession itself is still noble and necessary, but it gets a bad rap. A lot of it because of media, and also, because of a few bad apples. It's not the whole. It's just a small part. But in dealing with narcissistic people, they would give you just enough breadcrumb, just enough to make you think, okay, it's finally going to happen. And then when you thought you were going to get that approval, you'd get shut down again. So that was my wake-up call. And it got so bad that I knew I needed outside help, and I needed it from somebody who didn't know me, somebody who wouldn't have a predetermined judgment about me, somebody who could make their own determination about what kind of person I was. So I did what nobody thought I would ever do, and I sought out a therapist. And for everybody that's looking for a therapist, and having trouble finding somebody, I get it. It's not easy. It I literally called and emailed 12 different therapists that never got back to me. Didn't even answer my calls or emails. And then as I was about to give up on that, kind of threw my phone down on the table, and I was on a website for therapists, and a particular therapist popped up. And I looked at the picture, and it's a female therapist. And as I looked at the picture and saw her eyes and saw her smile, I said, she's going to answer me. And I sent the email, and the very next morning I got a reply, and she said that she had availability, and I started going there. It was harsh, dealing with, the divorce, because unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it gets ugly, or more overly complicated when it doesn't need to be. And I was also dealing with things going on at work, being burned on promotions and things like that. And, I also have been seeing a life coach kind of person as well. And, between my therapist and between the life coach, the two of them really, really made me at ease and made me able to talk about things, and tell them things that, even like my own family members don't know. And it's not because I don't love my family or trust them, but we all have people we feel more comfortable telling stuff to. And in the case of my therapist and my life coach, both such beautiful people, both female, but just amazing, warm energy, bright lights about them, and very intuitive, empathic, and they listened to me, and they made their own judgments about me, and it reaffirmed to me that, yes, I am a good person, and yes, I was in two very poor situations, that weren't treating me well, and I deserved far better than I was allowing. And the life coach has a way of being very blunt, but not in a mean way, just flat out telling you, how things are. And a lot of that was, when she said it, it was painful to hear, but it was also so blatantly obvious that I couldn't understand how I didn't see it before. And she explained to me that the marriage I was in, I put up with it as long as I did because it was a symbiotic, reciprocal relationship where, I had the need to please and to get acceptance and validation through my acts of service. And the person I was with really recognized that right off the bat, and, manipulated the situation to breadcrumb me, just give me enough to make me want to try harder. And then, kind of smack me down again. And we were in a toxic cycle. And like I said, I'm not trying to bash my ex, because she played her part, and it wasn't great, but I played my part and I went along with it. I had other reasons for staying, mainly kids, I didn't want them having to deal with going through a divorce. So I was trying my best to hold everything together, but my home life was miserable. My work life was miserable. So basically my life was miserable, and I knew it. But that was me putting everybody else before me. I wasn't giving myself anything. I worked, I provided, I took care of everything outside, I took care of a lot of things inside. I was basically doing just about everything. And then when I would go to work, you know, I'd be treated poorly there, but I had to keep doing my job. And, as a supervisor, you have to keep your personnel motivated and everything. So I was getting beaten down on both ends. During my time going through the divorce period, when I was doing my therapy sessions, there was one kind of recurring nightmare that I was having. And I don't remember when it started, but I just remember, dreaming that I was in a deep, dark pit and I could see no light anywhere. And I couldn't find a way to climb out. I was just stuck there. And it was a very sad, depressing, hollow, cold place. There was nobody that cared. There was nobody trying to help me out. And I felt like I was being held there against my will, is the best way I can describe it. And as I worked with the life coach and the therapist and started realizing that I was the cause of a lot of my unhappiness because of what I was tolerating and allowing and accepting, and because I wasn't setting healthy boundaries and I wasn't, giving people the reason to respect me, thankfully I started to come around and accept what I needed to do, what I needed to change, and the person I needed to become, which mainly was somebody who knew their worth and their value and respected themselves. And, I never understood that I didn't do those things. I didn't know those things. Nobody ever told me. That was another thing that came out. Unfortunately, I lost my dad way too early, back in 2012. He was only 64. And I never doubted that, he loved and cared about me, and, that I was important to him. But when I was very young, he worked hard, construction labor and stuff like that. And he would come home, do his shower, then come down to the den, sit and read his newspaper while my mom was in the kitchen cooking and my brother and sister were off doing whatever. And I would stand there next to him, and I would stand there very quietly, because I didn't want to disturb him. But at the same time, I was hoping, that I would get his attention and, have him want to play with me and tell me that I was a good kid and all those kind of things. But I didn't act out. I didn't misbehave. I didn't do anything to disturb him. I just stood there and hoped. And again, it had nothing to do with me thinking he didn't love me, because that was never a question in my mind. But what I found out, through my mentor, and, I also go every so often, I'll get a tarot reading. The particular place that I have to go to is phenomenally accurate. It's kind of funny. Like, I don't think there's really anything that they told me that hasn't happened. But, my dad came through in spirit and basically said, you know, that I grew up the way I did, always being good and always, you know, trying to stay good and not do things. I never drank. I didn't do drugs. I didn't party. I was a designated driver. I was a peer leader. Um, you know, I knew that I wanted to be a police officer someday, so I was very rigid in being good. I was very old as a young person. I was very mature, very rigid in being good. And, you know, what my dad basically said to me was, you know, he looks back now that he's in heaven, he looks back at that little boy standing there next to him, just waiting for him to show me, you know, that he cared and that he loved me and that I was a good person, and telling me the things that he needed to tell from a father to a son about respect yourself, know your worth, know your value, and don't let people treat you poorly. Unfortunately, you know, my dad is one of many that was in Vietnam, and, you know, he had most definitely had to have had PTSD, but it wasn't a thing back then as far as being diagnosed and understood. And what he explained was that he wasn't capable of giving me what I needed because he could barely keep himself together. And that, I felt horrible for him, you know, when I found that out, because I didn't go through what he did. I didn't see all the horrific things that he did. And the fact that he held it together as well as he did to, you know, maintain a hardworking job, provide for his family. He did a lot of coaching for sports, for, you know, youth and everything like that. And he did love us and he did do a lot with us. You know, that is impressive as hell to me. So I understand now, you know, why it was that way. Having faced that, having, you know, going through with the mentor and being told, speak as that little boy, not as you are now, but speak as that little boy, you know, talk about how he feels and, you know, what he wants to say to his dad and everything. It wasn't easy, but, you know, she, like I said, was very comforting and was able to put me at ease, and make it so that I could process that. And, you know, little by little, like I said, between the two of them, I was able to dig out of that deep, dark hole little by little. And, you know, I started to get better, and I started feeling better about myself. But every time I would start to feel better, something would happen either during the divorce or at work that would knock me back down. And I specifically remember at one point being able to find a way to pull myself up to the top of that pit. And when I got there, just as I pulled myself up so my head was sticking over the edge, I just heard a voice come out of the darkness and say, "Where do you think you're going? We're not done with you yet." And a big black boot just came out of nowhere, kicked me in the face, and knocked me right back down to the bottom of the pit. And it was very defeating. It was tough. That was at my lowest point, you know, doing the shadow work. And I understand where that came from now, and, you know, who was behind it. There was a lot of very nasty, manipulative, destructive energy being sent my way, whether you believe in that kind of thing or not. But it was something that I had to come to terms with. And I had to try and lift myself back up and start finding a way to climb out again. A lot of people, I think, would have struggled with it a lot more. I have always believed myself to be a very strong and resilient person. And as a matter of fact, when I went to my therapist the first day and told her everything that was going on in my life and why I was there, and it was more than just, my work and my divorce, horrific things that I've seen throughout my career, losing my dad early. I had a whole slew of things all going on at once. And I was sitting there smiling while I was telling her. And at the end of the session, she just kind of looked at me shocked. And she was like, "Oh my God." And I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm pretty impressed that I'm actually sitting here being able to smile and tell you everything as calmly as I have. And she looked at me, she's like, "I am too. I feel very bad for you. You need a lot of work. I'm glad you reached out." The next time I went, she told me that she had a dream about me. And this speaks to what I was saying about believing in my strength and my resiliency. And she said that she had a dream that, it wasn't me in this form, but I was like a big rock sticking up out of the ocean. And she said there were horrific waves slamming off of me from all sides. But she knew it wasn't me. That it wasn't a rock and it wasn't waves and it was the ocean. She said it was me and having the strength and the resolve and the resiliency, shielding my kids and my loved ones from bad things, having them all bash off of me instead to keep them safe. And I was very humbled at that description, because while I do believe, that I am a strong person and there's nothing I wouldn't do to protect my loved ones, I didn't see it that way. I wouldn't allow myself to see it that way, I should say. Coming to so many realizations, that the majority of my problems were my own doing was hard. It's not easy admitting to our own faults and our own weaknesses. It's even harder to accept them as being our fault. And learning how to overcome them is extremely difficult as well. But having gone through it all, having points where I almost felt like it was hopeless and that it wasn't going to get better, but having the strength and resolve to push through, my life has transformed considerably. And that's not a lie. I am a much happier person. I don't carry around the stress and anxiety of either issue anymore. I've made peace with a lot of things. I actually physically stand taller now. I guess I used to kind of hunch forward because I was so beaten down. But now I walk very upright, good posture like I should be regardless. And people have actually noticed. They've actually looked at me and been like, "Wow, you look like you're 10 feet tall." So that shows me that doing that shadow work paid off. I know my value. I know my worth. I respect myself and I put up boundaries. And anybody that disrespects me or crosses the boundaries like they don't exist, they're simply cut off. No more access to me. I don't put up with anything anymore. I don't care who it is. If you're not there, to reciprocate the love, care, respect, and friendship that I'm offering, the same way that I'm giving it to you, then forget it, you're gone. And that might sound like a cold attitude, but it's really not, because in doing so, I've rid myself of the people that were trying to keep me down, that were trying to keep me in that dark pit. And I've surrounded myself with a lot of very beautiful, genuine, good-hearted, kind-souled people. People that are the way that I view myself and always have. But I'm attracting it now because I know my value, my worth. I have my self-respect, and I set my boundaries and I keep them. I will never allow anybody to try and put me in a corner, knock me down, or tell me I'm not good enough. I'm good enough. I'm better than good enough. Most importantly, I'm good enough for me. I am enough. And, you know, if people don't want to get on that train of thought and they want to try and be negative to me, they're blocked. I simply don't allow access. And nobody should. If somebody's treating you poorly in any fashion, don't allow that. They have no right. You know, if you're not doing that to anybody and you know it's wrong, why would you accept anybody doing it to you? So my message today is for everyone who's in that deep, dark pit and thinking there's no way possible. You're wrong. Anything is possible as long as you make the decision, you put in the effort and the work, and you're willing to face your shortcomings, your weaknesses, your inadequacies, and you're willing to accept them. Once you accept them, then you can overcome them. And then you can become the best version of yourself, the version that you deserve to be, the version where people respect you and care and are genuinely showing gratitude that you're in their circle. Those are the people you want to be around. The people that want to keep you down because they're down, because they don't want to be alone, because they're too afraid or too scared or too lazy to get in and do the shadow work. Don't be one of those people. We all have it within us to change our world. Just depends on how bad you want it and what you're willing to face to get there. Like I said, being afraid, using fear as an excuse, that is the dumbest thing ever. Fear is nothing more than a manifestation of our own insecurities and weaknesses. It is not a physical thing. It cannot do any physical harm to you. It can't hurt you in any way because it has no power unless you give it power. So why would you give it power? You know, it's easy for me to sit here and say these things to you, but I feel confident in doing so because I have been through it. I faced it. I went through one hell of a year-long uphill battle to get through it and get out of it and rise above. You know, and my life coach actually, you know, she's very spiritual as well. And, you know, she had told me previously doing energy work that there was a field of protection around me, that I was being protected by all of those from my family that are in heaven, and by heaven because, you know, they recognized what a good person I am and what I was trying to do. So there was a bubble of protection around me to help me get through and get by, and not be hurt by, you know, those people that didn't have my interest at heart. But then the last time I was in, she said it came through very strong, you know, from heaven and from all of my family members that are up there, that bubble of protection was gone because I don't need it anymore. Because I've become so strong and in my own power now that it's been replaced by a very bright blue, hot, burning flame around me that just repels anything negative, because I finally come back and taken my power back and stepped into it and embraced it. And that power is what I keep saying. I finally learned my worth and my value, and respecting myself and setting boundaries and accepting nothing less than what I want. And that's not, an arrogant thing. It's not a power trip thing. It's not bad in any way. It's positive. It means that you did the work, that you chose to go through the darkness to find the light. And I'm so glad I did, because it's changed my life. So for anybody wondering if they can do it, I'm here to tell you that you can. And I'm also here to tell you that I am here to support you in any way that I can. I will lend you that hand. I will give you those positive affirmations. I will send you strength through energy. I believe everybody can do it if they choose to. And some people just need that catalyst. And I would be humbled and feel blessed to be that catalyst for you. So in closing, like I always say, know your value, know your worth, respect yourself. I see you all for who you really are, and I love you guys for it. And I'm sincere when I tell you that. Make the decision. Do the shadow work. Be strong enough to get through it, and be strong enough to ask for help when you need it. I promise you, when you get to the other side, you'll be so, so happy that you did. Because the difference is nothing short of amazing. Take care, guys. I'll see you guys soon.